Welcome to the last objective in Module 1. So this is Module 1, Objective 5. And Objective 5 is construct a map through basic GIS software components. So the two purposes is to describe key steps for making a map and then also to identify key map elements so you can communicate your map well. So key steps for map construction. There's three kind of major key steps. The first one is determine the objective. The second one is to decide on what data layers. And then the third one is plan out the layout. So planning. That is the most important thing if you're going to create an effective map. So if you were trying to figure out the objectives of the map, you need to know the scope of the project. And so that might mean asking a lot of questions of the client. It might be asking a lot of questions of yourself. Might be asking a lot of questions of the needs of the public. So the objectives really need to answer what is the information to be communicated and to what audience. The second step is to decide on the layers. So this is really like, what data do I need to answer my question? And so that it may not come in a form of like, what type of data do I need, but it comes to the form of what data. So here it asks, you need to answer the question, what data is needed to support the objectives? And then we need to plan out the layout. So this is including all the different map elements. It takes some time to make a map look nice. So in order to make a template and put everything in where it needs to go, and including what symbols you need, all of that needs to be planned out in advance rather than kind of winging it at the end. So then this is where, again, like I just said, instead of just winging your symbols and trying to figure out that, you need to choose your symbols and colors. And this is where cartography really comes in, because cartography looks at those colors and symbols. And you guys get to take a full course on that. But you really want to maximize the readability and maximize the effect of what you were trying to portray. Then you get to create the map. So that's the next step in map creation or construction. So now this is where you start making little adjustments. A plan is always a working document, right? But pay attention to those aesthetic qualities. And again, when you guys take cartography, that is going to help you a lot in this aspect for what should this look like. So if we kind of jump backwards a little bit here to mapping elements, what mapping elements do we need to include? Now these are only there's only 5 here. There is more than that. We're going to start with that. But we need to start with the map data layers. That's the first most important one. So what data am I showing? And I need to have the actual map on the piece of paper or on the screen. I need a title for my map because that's going to allow me to know what my scope is. I'm going to need a legend because a legend will allow me to understand what symbols I'm using and what they mean. North arrows are recommended, but they're not always necessary, and you'll go more into that in cartography. But it depends on the map projection that's being used. Because if the north arrow is misrepresenting what direction north is, depending on where you are on the map, then you probably don't want to use it. But for most of our maps, we're going to be using north arrows that point straight north, so it makes sense to have them. You also want to have the scale. Now the scale needs to be 2 things. It needs to be a scale bar and it needs to be a scale ratio. So there's 2 components to that one. Then we have, I'm just going to quickly go through that. So this is a really short one. So we have title, legend, north arrow, scale. So scale is scale bar, scale ratio. You need to put your name. That's missing on this slide here. The author should always be on there, and the date you created the map, because in the future, if you decide that you are going to use that map, things may have changed, and so you want to make sure that you have that. You also need to have a source citation. You always should have that. That's really, really important. Make sure that you cite the sources of all your data layers, every single one of them, and that needs to be actually on the map. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. So even if you like download a table from a web page and you're like, oh, but I created the actual map. Yes, you did, but you did not create the data. So every single thing needs to be cited. And then I think that's really the big one there. So let's go to the next slide here. And so it says some of the optional ones. So graphics and pictures is definitely optional. Neat lines, I actually consider a neat line to be a requirement because it kind of sets that map in place. So what a neat line is the like the border around the map. So it kind of creates that beginning and end of the map and brings the eye to the center. There's also graticules, which is showing the latitude and longitude lines. So depending on what your scale is of the map, sometimes these are helpful, sometimes they're not. So there are 10 main ones that I really want you to have on your map. So you're going to have your title, you're going to have your name, you're going to have the date that you created the map, you're going to have the legend, you're going to have a north arrow, you're going to have a scale bar and a scale ratio, you'll have the neat lines, you're going to have the source citation, and then you'll also have the map itself. So those are the 5 key elements that, oh, and the 10 key elements that you're going to have, there's one that is also missing on here, and I just realized that. So there's 11 because I forgot that I don't count the data layers anymore as one is for marks. But the other one is your map projection. So because the map projection needs to be put on there as well, because then I know what distortions to expect when I'm looking at the map. So let me repeat that. So we have the title, your name, the date that you created the map, the legend, the north arrow, the scale bar, the scale ratio, the neat line, the source citation, and the map projection. Then you have your actual map itself. So those are the 11 things that you should always, always, always see on there. If you like grid lines, you can put grid lines on there as well. Some people really like to use them for reference, and that's totally fine. So here they call it graticules as well, and I call them grids. They're called grids. So in summary, this is again a short little lecture this time around. Just the whole idea was to review the key steps and considerations to effectively communicate your map. Those are the key things that you're going to see on every map that you hand in to me. So the required readings for this one is chapter 3, so presenting the GIS data. And again, you can follow the link here on how to make a map layout in ArcGIS Pro. And it'll just open up to a web page for you and you'll be able to use that. Again, highly recommend doing it. It's really going to show you what is exactly going on with ArcGIS Pro, and how to use it. So just click on it and it makes a little box for me. Perfect. So there you go. So you can go here and it will show you, it's got little videos on how to do it. And sometimes you need to be able to read through and it's like, well, I don't need to open a project. I've already done that. So read through, try to find it, and they'll show you how to do some of this stuff here. Now, again, they don't have everything on there that I'm expecting, but I am expecting more if you, to hand in. So you need to have those 10 elements. So please remember them. I'll repeat. Title, your name, the date you created the map, the legend, the north arrow, the scale bar, the scale ratio, the source citation, the map projection, and the neat line. Those are the 10 things. And then, of course, the data. So then you're going to complete assignment 1, keep working away at that, and there's references for today's thing. And so that is everything. That's all of module 1. So next week will be module 2.